Good afternoon, Prynawn da, pawb. My name is Matt Swan from DTA Wales, Development Trust Association Wales, and today I'm pleased to host another Egin Learning and Sharing webinar on the subject of setting up a community renewable energy project. So Egin is a programme which has been running since the beginning of last year, helping community groups in Wales to tackle climate change, become more sustainable, and we do that by offering groups mentors who can offer their advice and support to help them take the steps they need to take to start on their climate journey. And we have these webinars from time to time on different topics. Today's is all about how you might want, about setting up a community renewable energy project. And we're pleased to have with us today both two representatives from Ynni Teg. So we have Jane O'Brien and Veronica Tadrak, and we'll be hearing from them on their experience of the challenges, but also the opportunities of setting up a community energy project, and a little bit about what Ynni Teg does. And we also have Mike Phillips with us from Pro-Dyfu Community Renewables, and he'll be sharing with us a little bit about what that project has achieved and the sorts of things that they've encountered on the way. And there'll be opportunity at the end to ask questions of anybody. We aim to finish by 2 o'clock. A few more people joining us now. Yeah, we aim to finish at 2 o'clock, so we'd better get started now, I think. So yes, if any questions about that, or should we pass over to, is it Jane first? Okay, I'll pass you over to Jane O'Brien. Thanks very much.
As I'll be putting on the presentation on the screen, would you mind enabling that for me?
Yeah, I'll show you. Shall I just make you co-host so you can share? Would that be
Yes,
best?
please. That'd be great.
Okay, I've just done that now. Yeah. Jane. There's a few more people joining us now. Apologies.
Okay, that's visible.
Just a quick apology to those joining late, in that you may have noticed there was a broken Zoom link invite, but we've fixed that now. So hopefully people that were trying to get on earlier are now able to join us. We're recording today's session and just introduced our speakers today. So passing over to Veronica from Ynni Teg.
Can you all see my screen?
No.
No.
Yes, no. Yeah.
Yes. All good?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go, Jane.
As Matt said, I'm Jane. I'm a development manager for Ynni Teg, and Veronica is also going to be providing parts of this presentation, and she's our research and support officer. When I'm going through the slides, we are going to be covering a lot of information, but the slides will be available, and you can always ask in the chat or afterwards, as Matt said. Right, what is community energy? Well, community energy, it can be a range of different types of projects. Well, it's all about community ownership, and with community ownership, bringing in social, economic and environmental benefits within a local area. We believe that together we have the power to control our energy and create a positive future for next generations. Thank you, Veronica. Ynni Teg, as Matt mentioned, we're actually a community benefit society. We started off with a single wind turbine. We have close relationship with Community Energy Wales, who actually started up Ynni Teg as a project. We don't just develop our own energy projects. We are pan-Wales, and we assist groups across Wales to develop their own projects. So, yeah, thank you, Veronica. So the talk today is about developing a community energy project. And on this slide, I've highlighted the main things you need to think about when you're first looking to develop a project. You know, we do have groups that come to us that know what their project is going to be, that have a really set idea. But we also have groups coming to us that just want to do something, want to make their area net zero, and they want to know how to go about it. So yeah, just different levels of knowledge when people are first looking at develop a community energy project. So the first thing to think about is what's your scope and how big a project you want to do. You know, it might be just something around a community building that is linked to other projects around in the area, or it might be, yes, we want to build a wind farm or a solar farm. You know, so the projects can be large or small, and it's good to have a kind of vision that you want to get to at the end. Also, you know, what do you have any consumers in mind? Are you going to look at a specific geographical area to focus on? Or are you just looking for a community energy project that could be anywhere? What type of planning restrictions do you have in that area? And also, if you want to develop in a particular location, who owns the land or properties? So different things that you need to think about, and a really broad overview when you first start out. And once you've got your kind of bit of an idea, you want to do a scoping study. And what that means is you want to look at what is actually feasible in the area. You know, if you're looking at wind, is there a location that you can actually have a wind turbine? If you're looking at solar, you know, do you have a nice south-facing slope or building? So it's looking at what options you could actually develop. And also all of the other things that Veronica will be talking about later to do with more what we call smart local energy projects now. But we'll be going into those details later. But in the first instance, thinking of what renewable energy options you can look at. And then another important aspect when you're first developing an idea and a project is you need to really start community engagement as early as possible. And one example I can give is Transition Brogwine, who are based in Fishguard, and they developed their wind turbine project in partnership with a local farmer quite a number of years ago now, when feed-in tariffs were good. So there was lots of incentive to build the wind turbine. But the one thing that was against them was they were facing the national park. And we believe that because of their community engagement, and that means on all levels, not just local community, but also local politicians and local organisations, they actually managed to obtain planning permission first time round. And when they did their share offer, the share offer was filled within 2 to 3 weeks of them actually announcing it. So I think that's a really good example that community engagement is so important. Another example is Clantock Green Valleys, who we've been working with, and they've actually developed a lot of community engagement just on their concept of making the local area zero carbon across Quick Owl, which is a really ambitious vision. And, but because of their community engagement, people are now start to know what they actually want to achieve, even though it's going to take quite a while to achieve that. They've already started their engagement process before the project even starts. Another important point to think of when you're thinking of a community energy project is who is actually going to manage or deliver the project. I mentioned Ynni Teg before. We were set up by Community Energy Wales to actually do that, to manage a wind turbine project as a community benefit society. So you need to have some kind of entity and structure to be able to develop a project. And that includes getting funding, getting assistance in developing the project and everything else. So it may not be a big thing, but it's an important one to do very early on. Okay, thank you. Examples of community energy projects that developed so far are, as you can see, there's a list that kind of demonstrates the balance of which projects have been developed, and wind turbines are kind of at the top. And that was because not only, sorry, I was just looking at Dan's chat. Not only because they were a concept that was easier to develop, but also because at the time there was good feed-in tariffs from the government for wind turbines, and the ability to actually develop them was a bit simpler than maybe other projects. Other projects have been developed as solar. Avalon and Tar's 100 property rooftop project called Ynni is a good example. And then hydro, Ynni have developed a 100 kilowatt project near Bangor, and Corwin have a small hydro scheme as well. So this shows that, generally all of these projects have been about single types of renewable energy projects, so separate wind, solar, hydro. So looking at the future, looking at how projects are going to develop in the future, what we need to look at is the financial viability of renewable projects now. And the financial viability, when you're looking at attracting funding, like grants or loans, you have to demonstrate your viability. And at the moment, the energy market analysis shows that over the longer term, energy prices, so the money you get back from producing your energy, is going to decrease over the long term, which means that, say, if you're looking at, say, a single wind turbine, it's not actually financially viable to attract any loans at this moment in time. And when you're selling your power, just mention power purchase agreements, which are through energy suppliers, because there are other ways of attracting better agreements. You know, in other words, you get more money for your energy, and Veronica will be mentioning them later on. Another huge constraint is, especially in Wales, is the grid capacity within Wales. And there are very severe capacity constraints across Wales. And that has been kind of added to with the development of large-scale wind turbines off the coast. They're all impacting on the actual grid capacity across Wales as well. Examples of projects that are even being developed right now that are being affected by this is Ynni Adnewyddadwy has a planning permission for a 30-megawatt solar farm. Unfortunately, although they still have the grid offer, this has been restricted now to under 1 megawatt until 2037. So that's really impacted on how that project is going to go forward. And they're looking at alternatives of developing the project but without grid connection. So it has brought in more complications for that project. We're developing a single wind turbine up near Atebion, and we've also faced our grid offer has now been reduced from 1 megawatt to 950 kilowatts. If we wanted to keep the 1 megawatt, we would have had to go through a competitive process in order to retain that additional 50 kilowatts. So we've reduced our capacity to 950. As I've mentioned, the other main barrier has been the removal of the feed-in tariffs, which were an incentive given by the government for any renewable technologies until a few years back. Okay, so if I pass on to Veronica.
Yep.
And she's going to talk about what opportunities there are now, and they are within the context of things like battery storage is now a lot cheaper, and things like digital technology are making more opportunities available to projects now. Okay, thank you, Veronica.
Thank you, Jane. So I'm sure you're all aware of the fact that we are in a climate emergency and there's a race to achieve net zero by 2050, which means decarbonizing all of the sectors. I have listed here a number of ways the government intends to tackle the issues, but I would say the most relevant for us as community energy sector is the shift to renewable energy generation, electrification of heating and transport, energy storage installation, and looking at decentralization of energy systems. So in response to the climate emergency and the energy transitions, new concepts have been emerging, such as smart local energy systems. So this is a new approach that combines renewable energy generation, energy storage, and smart technologies that help to manage the energy more efficiently within the system. And by balancing the supply and demand locally, the energy can be more optimized. Within this approach, we're not looking separately at things like heat, transport, power, and storage. We're looking at how we can combine all of those and look at them holistically and benefit from the synergies. This takes a smaller scale, so we're looking at smaller locales, and through that, this is where sort of the decentralization results from, because instead of relying on a large centralized grid, future energy systems, such as smart local energy systems, will rely more on local resources that match the local generation to local supply. In practice, what it means is that the renewable energy generation is going to be located closer to the point of consumption, so closer to where it's actually used in houses and industries. The systems will be democratized, as there won't be one massive plant that sends out the energy, but smaller couple ones that provide energy locally. That means that energy storage and energy sharing will be more important than ever. And we are more than likely to rely on multiple technologies combined within a particular system. For community energy, it means that more importance is paid towards the understanding of consumer energy behaviors and energy needs, whether they can be optimized, whether they need to be any sort of behavioral change programs around energy use. We will be looking at smaller scale projects that are more complex instead of the larger ones. And we will be looking at different types of projects because, as Jane explained before, the previous approach of putting a renewable energy asset on the ground and securing a connection to the grid and getting paid from the feed-in tariff is no longer valid and financially viable. So a couple of current community energy project opportunities that we have identified that are still relevant and offer decent financial income would be the sleeving arrangements, which would not be smart local energy systems, and then mix of technologies, direct wire, and virtual models. Those three would be considered smart local energy systems. What I mean by sleeving arrangements, it's a system where a renewable energy generator has an agreement with a large off-taker to purchase power. However, the energy is still transported through the existing local distribution network, so it relies on the existing infrastructure, and the arrangement is basically just a written contract. The mix of technologies, there are multiple ways you can approach that. You can look at combining generation and storage. You can look at any cogeneration scheme, for example, installing a wind turbine and a solar farm. There are solar-powered heat pumps. You can look at electric vehicle charging hubs with solar canopies, or any sort of demand-side response programs. Direct wire is a type of project that's quite similar to the sleeving arrangements. However, in direct wire, there is a private wire system that combines that links the renewable generation to the off-taker, so the energy is no longer going through the licensed grid. And finally, there's a variety of virtual arrangements, starting with virtual power plants, which are networks of small local energy sources that combined together virtually can operate as a single large power plant. There's an option to provide virtual matching suppliers with consumers. That is a service that's provided by a company called Urban Chain. And there's Energy Local, where there's a small-scale energy ecosystem created with the local assets and the off-takers on the same substation. There are new changes coming in place in February that will open up more virtual energy opportunities. All of these projects that we suggest here as opportunities will improve the price to the generator and hopefully the cost to the consumer. So challenges, of course, those systems are more technologically complex. They're innovative. There's the smart layer that helps you to optimize, which means that there are communication devices that, adjust operation of different devices. There is increased organizational complexity. For example, if you're installing multiple different technologies, you need to coordinate the install of them, their operation. Funding and financial viability can also be tricky. Those projects, the SLAS projects, are likely to be more expensive. However, with innovation, there are additional grants being offered, and there's generally more interest to support those projects. However, there's loads of benefits despite those challenges. Within those systems, there is the reliability, security, and sustainability of supply to the local off-takers. There are environmental benefits as there is more use of the energy that is, well, renewable. And smart local energy systems in particular highlight the fact that, well, the local aspect really of them, that there's a local focus and a local impact being made in the area. So that means retaining tangible benefits locally. It's not just money that would go to the communities. We're talking about making a tangible difference to people's lives, improved air quality, hopefully creation of careers and jobs within the area, and lower bills for everyone that can connect to the system. So yes, I would say that the benefits significantly outweigh the challenges here. So to give you an example, if you wanted to realize net zero locally, here are some steps that you would take. So you would start, for example, you would start thinking about local demand. So how is the energy being consumed within the area? Can any energy efficiency measures be applied? Can you upgrade the building and offer retrofit measures? Then you need to look at grid constraint management, so address the grid limitations. That will definitely limit the amount of energy that you can export. Then you can have a look at renewable energy deployment. What places, what locales would be appropriate to install renewable energy assets, how they can be tailored to local environment and community needs as well. And finally, looking at sustainable transport infrastructure. Again, this can be EV charging station, it can be car clubs, but it can also be bike sharing programs and in general just improved public transport, anything that would promote cleaner, greener mobility options. So here we attach a 11 kilowatts heat map from National Grid. This will inform you what areas are connected to which substations, looking at the color, which should be the same for each substation. Looking at the heat maps while analyzing them, it will give you an idea of what is the network capacity within the area, how are the loads distributed within it, and whether there's any connection viability for your renewable energy assets, what would be the constraint zones, and potentially what issues you could encounter with planning. So it will help you really plan out the feasibility of your renewable energy installation. To build up on what Jane started, we have drawn out a process for developing local energy projects, ideally smart ones. So you would start with the setup phase, where you would think about your organizational setup, about the legal entity that would be formed, what would be your objectives, what's the governance of it, and initial scoping of the projects. So figuring out the general outline of what you would like to install and how it would work. Then you move into planning and feasibility stage, where you conduct feasibility studies, the technical, environmental, and financial assessments, and the initial design. You would like to consult community at this stage. You do want to engage with the stakeholders. You want to address their concerns. Also, the benefit of reaching out to the community is that you are making the project for them and they really know the area best and they know what they need. This will help you build the support going on forward. You do want to think about planning applications as well on this stage. You want to prepare them and submit them as required. Any other legals, potentially landowner engagement, if necessary, should also take place at this stage. In pre-construction preparation phase, you want to look at the post-planning preparation. You want to finalize your technical designs, your procurement strategies, and the plan of your project. You do want to figure out what your route to market will be. In other words, how you're going to sell the energy that you generate. Is it going to be through PPAs? Are you going to have grid connection arrangement? Is it going to be a direct wire? These are the questions for this stage. Then moving on to financial and constructural close phase. This is where you secure your full funding through either loans, grants, community shares, or any other sources, really. You want to finalize the contracts with your contractors and suppliers. In implementation phase, the next one, this is where you construct and install. This is when you manage the whole process. You ensure quality control and system commissioning. You ensure that the project is built to specifications and regulatory standards. And the best phase, which is, sorry, rushing through, which is the operational phase, really, which is just requires ongoing monitoring, maintenance, and optimization. A phase that has not been mentioned here, as it doesn't directly impact setting up with a project, is the end of life and decommissioning. However, it is worth giving it a thought, even at the early stages, whether you want to continue with the project and put a new technology on, whether you're going to be disposing of it. That is a part of the project approach. And thank you. That's everything from me. Back to Jane.
Thank you, Veronica. I mean, yeah, this has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but we are both available for any emails, and you can also put any questions in the chat that you don't think we've covered so far. Right. All of the things that Veronica's been talked about, obviously you can't do these things alone, so you do need to get support for a community energy project. And as Matt explained at the beginning, Ynni can provide mentoring, help smaller scale projects with visioning and setup. They can also utilise Compass, an organisation that can help you to select which is the best organisational structure for your project. By joining Community Energy Wales, you can become a part of a network which offers different support, including just being part of a network and being able to talk to other people who are developing projects themselves. And also they can connect you with other community energy organisations, but also other networks. The Welsh Government, for funding, the Welsh Government Energy Service will provide you with preparatory grant support. That means when you're setting up the first parts of your project, you're going through your planning permission, you're maybe engaging a contractor for design or something, then they can provide grant support to carry out this work. The projects have to be at least, the criteria at the moment is 200 kilowatts and above. This may change, don't know, but that's the current requirement. Also, as we keep kind of stressing, you need to have a constituted and recognised organisation to be able to attract this grant support. And for Greg's, you also need to have developed your concept to know what project you want to go towards. in saying that, you know, the team are very happy for you to chat with them, especially, and contact them early on as well. YnNi Teg, as we said, can provide initial project scoping. We do, at the moment, get some core funding from Welsh Government, so we provide some support. It's very light touch support because we haven't got the capacity for more detailed support. To just give you initial support when you're forming an idea. We can then also provide project development services, say as part of a prep grant application. I need to say there are other organisations, but the list is quite long, so I haven't really mentioned them here. YnNi Cymru will provide assistance in the form of smart local energy system tools, help develop a project and to explain in greater detail, you know, what a smart local energy system is and which model is relevant for you. They do also provide grant assistance, but there's no information at the moment what their next call will be. They've recently done a call for capital grants for projects, and I think they're in the process of awarding that at the moment. Another funding stream is the energy redress funding. This isn't just about renewable energy projects, it's also about energy efficiency and other types of support projects. There's a large emphasis of this on primarily to assist vulnerable householders. You're talking very large sums of money, and there's funding up to 2 years, and each call is quarterly. You have to actually register with Energy Redress to be notified of each of the calls and what they're going to cover. But it's worth thinking about doing that so that you actually know what's coming up. Another revenue funding stream is the Climate Action Fund and the Lottery Climate Action Fund, which again provides capacity for developing projects and also for carrying out projects. And obviously, as it's called the Climate Action, it's wider than renewable energy. I think I've seen in the chat there's a number of organisations that could probably help as well. So this list isn't kind of finite. There is other support, and I do know there's local authority support in each area, so it's good to have a look at your local authority website for any funding support projects. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane and Veronica. So without further ado, I'm aware of time. If we could pass now over to Mike from YnNi Community Renewables. If you could try to keep it to about 10 minutes, Mike, if possible, just to allow a question or two at the end, that would be brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I think I've given you co-host rights, so you should be able to share your screen if that's possible.
Is that working?
Yeah.
Okay, good afternoon. My name's Michael Phillips. I'm the current chair of Wedi'i Community Renewables. So we've got a voluntary committee that run the organisation that we have on a rotating basis, so that we try to keep the organisation as democratic as possible. And I am the current chair and here to present to you today. Thanks to Matt for the invite today. Just to give you a little quick update on how we did the project, because we were the first Wales-based community energy scheme to get up and running in 2002. I think we were the second in the UK. We did have the benefit of being close to the Centre for Alternative Technology and a lot of very skilled people who could help us take the project forward. And that's how we did it. We, to go back over what Jane said, we actually did it ourselves. We did get some grant funding in from Scottish Power and Ynni, but primarily all the effort behind the project came from ourselves. We conceptualized it, we developed it, we built it, and we operate it. I realize that's not probably the best model at the moment, and as Jane said and Veronica said, these projects do need a lot of support. So I don't know if I've got, just see if I can whisk through. Are the slides changing, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so BDCR, we're a registered cooperative society under the Cooperative and Community Benefits Society Act 2014. We had to change in 2014. We were previously an industrial and provident society, which is a form of cooperative, but they were discontinued. So we're now a registered cooperative society, and our purpose is to function as a cooperative. Basically, we try to embrace the principles of the International Cooperative Alliance. We work on a democratic basis. We have strong social responsibility within the organization, equality, equity. We strongly embrace the values and principles of the ICA in trying to act cooperatively with our members, of which we've got about 206 currently. And our primary focus is on, obviously, the climate crisis and reducing dependency on fossil fuels. There's a very quick history of how we got here. We started in the year 2000. We had to set up a partnership, which became then the vehicle for our Industrial and Provident Society. We got our first turbine up and running in 2002. And then that was the Vestas V17, and then a Nord tank was energized in 2010. And right the way through to the modern day, where we're currently in the process of installing a further 300 kilowatt of ground mount solar. And that's to take up what limited headroom there is on the grid. So Jane explained very clearly the grid limitations in Wales. We had a tiny bit, 200 kVA of grid capacity left in the grid, and we've taken that up with the solar system, which I'll very quickly update you on. Where are we? Well, we're mid Wales, north of Aberystwyth, south of Dolgellau, up the Dyfi Valley, and then up the smaller Dilas Valley towards Corris. And there's a couple of turbines. There's actually three. There's a landowner turbine as well. So there's 3 turbines altogether on the ridgeline on Mynydd Glendulus, as you can see from the image there above the Centre for Alternative Technology. The northernmost turbine was originally private wire connection direct to CAT, but that was discontinued at one stage and is now a grid connected project in the forestry to the right, as is our larger Nord tank turbine. We went through extensive community consultation around what kind of renewables we wanted, how we wanted to constitute ourselves. There are various options open to you. I explained we're a cooperative society, but there are any other models that are available, such as community benefit societies and CICs. It depends on what your purposes as a community are, and you should shape the constitution of your organization around your purposes. And overwhelmingly, the community came out in support of basically wind projects on Mynydd Glendulus. So our first project it's quite a small turbine by modern standards, a 75 kilowatt second-hand Vestas machine from Denmark. It had already been generating for 20 years. and we've managed to squeeze at least another 17 years out of it now, 17, 18 years out of it. So turbines do run and run if they're based on very good engineering models. The original cost was 81,000. We had 59 shareholders. And basically we managed to develop this single turbine, fairly modest in scale, for our shareholders. And the shareholders, as a result of that investment, then get a return on their investment through a form of dividend at the end of the year. Currently, our dividends we're paying out is around 7 to 8%, so they're fairly generous compared to some of the other models that can only really afford 3% at this stage. There's the shareholders at the opening and energizing of the wind turbine at Ynni Adnewyddadwy, pulling the handle to get the turbine going. And they were the original pioneers. They got BDCR up and running and gave the organization momentum, in effect. There was another turbine up on the hill, an old MS4, which we sought then to repower. Again, we repowered it with a second-hand wind turbine from Denmark, a much larger project cost of around about 250k, and we took on a lot more shareholders. In terms of what Jane was saying about subscription to share offers, we were well oversubscribed, and we had to reduce the potential ownership of each individual shareholder so that we could be as fair, equitable and democratic as possible, and invite as many shareholders into the organisation as we can. That's us putting in the transformer. As I said, we were pretty hands-on. We pretty much did it all, including, you know, making arrangements for the delivery of the turbine from Denmark, getting it up to site, getting the cranes in. So it was a genuine community effort. It's not so easy now with modern installations, particularly if you're buying new kit, because they tend to have to be installed by registered installers. But as you know, you'll find out with the PV project, we've actually installed that ourselves as well. There's a strong corollary of the whole project is our community energy fund. So we've had 35 beneficiaries so far. We've distributed over £100,000 to local groups, local initiatives, anything that's got a link to carbon reduction, food miles, energy efficiency. We will seek to support it, and that includes £60,000 that we distributed October to March in 2023 during the energy price spike. So we're in a discretionary position where we can take additional income that we earn and redirect it into the community energy fund, which fulfills our social responsibilities. The PV project, there's a quick timeline for it. We're currently at the process of installation. We've got the system installed, we're doing the wiring, but we're held up by the DNO and the grid connection arrangement, which we hope to have installed in spring 2025. We've got 300 kilowatt installed, which cost us approximately £380,000. And again, we're modelling a 3 to 5% return on that project. We will be opening it out to new shareholders. So the idea is to bolster the shareholder base within the organisation and not just purely benefit the existing members. And there's a pretty picture of it. That's just one of the arrays. There's 4 arrays up there. Quite a tidy little scheme. It shares the grid connection with the Nord tank behind it through an interface with Scottish Power. And then very quickly, again, key essentials, you know, the benefits and the challenges. Challenges of self-installation, there were all kinds of pitfalls around it, and we've learned an awful lot. If we were to do it again, gosh, we'd do it so much better. But hey, you know, we've been fairly successful anyway. As Veronica and Jane said, there's the lack of grid availability, which, you know, there's a series of wet strings in Wales now that really can't take any new renewables. And so your solutions for a community energy project will have to look at how you can resolve that. Having market knowledge, you know, we sell our power at the e-auction, which is for renewable obligation certificate projects. So we have to have a degree of market knowledge. and know what's a good price to sell our power for, or whether we go to open market and seek better prices. So they can be a challenge understanding the energy market. And indeed, it's quite a challenge of having the available skills and the amount of volunteering hours that goes into these projects. But in terms of, the key essentials of what you require, they're listed down on the left-hand column. I'm sure there's a lot more to that as well. But the main thing is that local involvement and local commitment really goes a long way. It provides the energy for these energy projects and can make them a success. Because we're now just about on the cusp of our 25th anniversary now. So it shows these schemes can have the legs. It's good to remind yourselves that once you've got them up and running, you can't just sit back. There's a lot to do in the operational phase as well, particularly with operation and maintenance. So don't lose sight of that. But for all of us who've been involved today, it's been a genuine enjoyment, a real pleasure to work for the project and one that's been so successful.
Brilliant. That's fantastic, Mike. Thank you for that. And that was just about 10 minutes or 1 minute over. So thank you. We do have just 3 minutes or so for questions. So yeah, I see a raised hand there. Is it Myrna? Sorry, what's your name again? Hi. Please unmute yourselves and ask your question.
Yeah, yes. Hi. Thanks for your presentations, everyone. It's we're trying to gather as much information as possible, so it's really helpful. We are currently building a small community centre in Ynni in just past Pontypridd, and we are starting to think about hydroelectric. So the centre already will have heat pump and solar, but we're really interested in it sits along the Clydach stream, and we're wondering if we can get hydroelectric. Historically there was a feasibility study done 15 years ago, so we know it is feasible and feasible kind of technically and financially. But the question really is, what we're trying to work out is, do you have to sell to the grid, or can you just decide on a building and maybe say, I don't know, EV chargers, and then create the energy, use the energy and store the energy for your own needs? Or is it a situation where you have to feed it into the grid and get paid for the electricity you feed into the grid? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, kind of like make your own microgrid instead of having to connect with the main grid.
Who would like to respond to that? Jane or Veronica, would you like to respond?
I'm wondering whether Mike wants to say something. You've got a hydro scheme, haven't you, in Ogwyn?
It's not mine, but I've worked on lots of hydro. So any community energy project, Mona, will work. You don't have to be grid connected. It can be self-consumption, or it could be some sort of private wire microgrid. So part of our solar array, we're actually looking to supply the Centre for Alternative with a part of our output through a private wire arrangement. So that would have to go into, as Jane talked about earlier, into your scoping and feasibility study. It's very problematic getting abstraction licenses from NRW at the moment, and they are quite costly. But the benefit of hydro schemes is that they do give you a pretty guaranteed flow, and therefore a good indication of what your guaranteed income would be. So the answer is, you can have any kind of connectivity, whether to a private consumer or back to the grid, as part of your project.
Perfect, thank you.
Also, just to add to it, I'm not 100% sure, but it sounds like this scheme could benefit from a battery that would just, depending on the rate of self-sufficiency on site, you could maximize that and potentially just limit what you're buying from the grid instead of focusing on increasing the renewable generation for your project. You could focus on load matching. So to match the energy, the profile of the energy that you generate with your energy demand. I think that likely could be an easier solution, as installing a battery is less workload intensive than installing a hydro. So that's another thing to consider.
So you mean forget the hydro and look at a battery solution instead?
Have a look at it.
Okay.
Either or, yeah. I think you need to just look at the finances for each particular option. But as Mike said, you know, hydro, the great thing about hydro is its predictability. Whereas with wind and solar, you know, you only have a certain predictability for them. So it can be really good to run alongside any kind of technology, including storage. Yeah.
And I would recommend, if you want to look at feasibility, talk to Dulas Limited, DULAS. They're the hydro engineering specialists in Wales. They pretty much know every catchment in Wales, so they may not know what you're talking about, Myrna, but yeah, you can get in contact with them through the website.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're probably about time to wrap up. We're just after 2. If I just want to, thank you so much to Jane and to Veronica and Mike for your insights today. It's been really interesting to hear the landscape as it is now, and hear from the case study that Mike had to give about Brwydweithio community renewables. We've recorded this, so we'll make it available on our YouTube channel, YnNi Cymru YouTube channel, in which you can go back and check if you've forgotten what somebody said, and feel free to forward that to somebody that you feel might benefit from it as well. We also have an online community platform called Community, which I've just put a link in the chat here, which is a place for anybody engaged in climate action and community climate action in Wales to meet others doing the same and discuss stuff. So feel free to join that if you're not already on it. And yeah, please also feel free to add your name and contact details if you would like to in the chat here, if you haven't already, just to kind of in case you'd like to connect with other people. If you do put your email address there, we won't, it's just for others to on this chat to see it and contact you, I guess.
Matt,
yeah.
Could you make the chat available for everyone, please?
Yes.
Also, you know, if it depends how many people didn't get on and that. I don't know about Mike, but you know, we've done the presentation now, so I'd be quite happy to do another session if you wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
It's more difficult, isn't it, to listen to a recording than just attend a Zoom session. So yeah.
Yeah, and would it be okay to share your slides, Jane and Veronica and Mike? With those who, so yeah, if you put your email address in this chat, we can forward that to you as well.
Okay.
So
the emails on the slides.
Yeah.
Just drop mine into the chat.
Great, thanks, Veronica. Okay, we'll hold it open for a minute or two while people do that. But for now, I'll just thank you again, everyone, for joining us today, and good luck with your community energy projects. And do get in touch with Egin if you feel we can help with any of that as well. We do provide support, mentoring support, as we said earlier, and consider the other options that have been mentioned as well for support. Thank you, everyone.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you for organizing that.
Thanks. That was really interesting. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.